Solo Leveling by Chu Gong. Chapter 58, Night of the Hunters. Puss! Jinho went in for a hug with tears in his eyes, but Jinwoo easily evaded him. Jinwoo raised an eyebrow at Jinchul, who had volunteered to look after Jinho while Jinwoo attended the conference. What's gotten into him? I showed him this when he woke up. Jinchul held up the newspaper he had been reading. The front page contained pictures of the defeated Scavenger Guild members, plus the face of the bloodied and unconscious Thomas. Jinwoo had thought it natural to save Jinho, but Jinho had only found out through the article. Who would have thought someone would take on both the best guild in the world and its guild master, Thomas, Goliath, Andre, in order to save Jinho's life? Jinho was moved to tears, and he was unable to contain himself upon spotting Jinwoo. Puss! But Jinwoo's agility was well above an S-rank hunter's, and no matter how hard Jinho tried, he couldn't hug the man. Dodging Jinho's attempt one more time, Jinwoo turned quizzically to Jinchul while pointing a thumb over his shoulder. Are you saying this guy read the article in English? Oh, the interpreter from the association felt bad that she was being paid to do basically nothing, so I had her translate the article for Hunter U. Ah. The tip of Jinho's nose was red, as if he was upset by Jinwoo's continuous dodging. Boss! Here! Jinho took the tissue Jinwoo handed him and blew his nose hard. Honk! Jinwoo understood how Jinho felt, but he couldn't let him slobber all over the expensive suit he'd brought for the conference. Calming down, Jinho wiped away his tears. By the way, boss, when did you learn English? It looked like Jinho remembered Jinwoo's conversation with Thomas even as he was passing out. I had a lot of time on my hands when I was a low-rank hunter. Jinwoo had basically been jobless when he wasn't scheduled for a raid, so whenever he could, he'd taken the opportunity to pick up some English to prepare for the future when his hunting days were over. I never thought I'd use it like this. He had fond memories of teaching himself the English language, but he never would have dreamed that his first conversation in English would be with Thomas Andre. Oh, right. Jinho nodded. Considering Jinwoo's past, he was even more touched by Jinwoo's loyalty and willingness to fight the whole of the Scavenger Guild just to save him, a mere D-rank hunter. Jinho began to tear up again. Boss! I will always believe in you and follow you to the ends of the earth. His eyes turned red, and his nose began to run again. Jinwoo smiled, but damn this keen perception stat. His extremely keen senses heightened his perception of Jinho's emotions, and it made him emotional in turn. He looked to Jinchul to avoid Jinho. I guess he can go now? Yes. Hunter Yu's doctor was quite surprised that his injuries had completely healed overnight. Okay, then let's get him discharged and head to the hotel. The Hunter Command Center has a car waiting for us. Understood. I'll get ready, boss. Jinho began to pack with swollen eyes. Jinwoo watched him fondly, thankful that he was safe. Yet at the same time, he still felt bitter and angry at the culprit behind the whole incident. Greed, you know what to do when we go back to the hotel, right? Yes, my king. As they left the hospital, Jinwoo comforted Greed by telling him that he had to assume the position for only 2 hours this time. The Hunter Command Center had sent 2 cars. Jinwoo joined Adam in the first because he wanted to discuss a personal matter with the agent. Jinho got in the second car with the 2 people from the Hunters Association. Jinwoo opened the car door. Clack. Adam was sleeping with his head leaning against the window. His shoulders twitched, and he shook the sleep from his head as the door opened. Oh, you're here, Hunter-sung. Adam looked rundown. Exhausted from his busy schedule and the events of the last 2 days, he had bags under his eyes. Jinwoo looked at him with pity as the driver started the car. Jinwoo got straight to the point. "Could I have a list of the hunters you'd like me to protect?" This jolted Adam fully awake, and his face brightened. "Have you changed your mind?" "No, I'm just curious." "Oh." Adam couldn't hide his disappointment, though this wasn't entirely bad news. Apparently, Jinwoo had some interest in the matter. Adam continued with a smile. "I'll create a list for you as soon as I get back to the Hunter Command Center." Jinwoo checked the time. It was already 9 o'clock at night. Was it his imagination? Or did Adam look even more run down than he had a few minutes ago after incurring yet another task? Sure enough, the agent looked like he was struggling to keep his eyes open and not fall asleep in front of Jinwoo. TSK. Jinwoo couldn't take it anymore and reached across the seat. "Huh? What?" As he covered Adam's eyes with his left hand, Adam's voice cracked. "Hunter Sung?" He froze at Jinwoo's instructions. "Stay still, okay?" This would have been creepy under any other circumstances, but it was Jinwoo Sung, the one who had almost beaten Thomas Andre to death, doing this to him. Adam swallowed hard, trying not to panic. Jinwoo tilted Adam's head back and poured a healing potion from the system shop into the agent's mouth. What's this? The agent was freaking out about being forced to drink an unknown liquid with his eyes covered. But as the mysterious substance went down his throat, he suddenly felt energized. As Jinwoo removed his hand from Adam's face, the American realized that the drowsiness he'd felt earlier was not just gone, but he felt as if his body was light and refreshed, like he had just woken up from a good night's sleep. He was no longer fatigued, like he had never been to begin with. Hunter Sung. How did he do this? Jinwoo just shrugged at the quizzical look in Adam's eyes. Trade secret. I see. Considering how incredible this was, Adam didn't bother to question it. He moved his body this way and that, his voice a mixture of shock and awe. Hunter Sung. How should I say this? I feel like even if you weren't a hunter, you'd be successful at whatever you chose to do. The praise seemed rather over the top, considering Adam was a top-notch agent of the Hunter Command Center who knew how to speak more than 10 languages. Regardless, Jinwoo smiled at the satisfaction on Adam's face. Besides, this made it easier to ask him a favor. The list of the hunters needing his protection was just the preamble. Could you also please organize a meeting with the hunters on the list? That would be his golden opportunity to conceal one of his soldiers within each of their shadows to guard against attacks from the monarchs. However, Adam shook his head. Jinwoo had been worried about this. Although the Hunter Command Center possessed great power, it might be too complicated to gather such amazing people together on such short notice. Jinwoo frowned. I suppose that would be too difficult. No, that's not it. There's no need to organize such a meeting. Adam smiled as he explained the last item on the conference agenda. Because we've got the Night of the Hunters. It sounded like the title of a video game, but Adam seemed excited about it. It's this big party thrown by the Hunter Command Center for the hunters who attend the conference. If you want, you can meet everyone there. A party. What better way was there to casually meet the hunters he needed to assign shadow soldiers? Jinwoo grinned. Perfect. He could get to the monarchs through the hunters and figure out who were his enemies and who were his allies. And from there, he could figure out who to fight and how to fight them. Sounds good. Jinwoo leaned back in his seat as the car drove into the American night. The best hunters from all over the world along with their entourages were gathered inside a banquet hall with a 1,500-person capacity for the Night of the Hunters. Wow! Jinho gawked at the sight of the legendary hunters he had only ever seen on TV. Meanwhile, those same hunters looked at Jin Woo in a similar light. As soon as he entered the hall, he was the center of attention. "Hey, over there! I saw! He's right in front of me, but I can't sense his presence at all. He really is on another level." Jinho received as much attention as his boss. "So the person next to him is... he's the one Hunter Sung fought Thomas to rescue?" The Hunter Command Center had released a statement earlier that day to clear the air. Hunters were shocked that Jin Woo would take on the entirety of the Scavenger Guild to save his D-rank colleague. It was a sobering testament to the fact that Jin Woo wasn't merely bluffing on that first day of the conference. "I will protect my family even if it means becoming an enemy of all hunters." They'd seen the pictures of the aftermath of the fight with the Scavenger Guild and hoped that Jin Woo wouldn't have to make good on his promise. In any case, now that the truth had been revealed, everyone wanted a chance to talk to Jin Woo. Their image of him had gone from the monster who had beaten Goliath to the hunter who had saved his colleague. The first person to bravely introduce himself to Jin Woo was the chairman of a well-known company specializing in handling of the remains of magic beasts. "It's an honor to meet you, Hunter Sung. I'm interested in purchasing the cadavers of the giant-type magic beasts. Do you have a minute to spare?" Since giants normally spawned as bosses in A-rank gates, it was very rare to find a perfectly intact corpse. A desire to grow his business compelled the chairman to make contact as soon as possible. Well, that worked out. Jin Woo smiled and introduced Jinho to the chairman. "I'm usually in charge of raids, and I let my vice president here handle business matters." "Oh, is that so?" Flattered by Jin Woo's introduction, Jinho proudly stuck out his chest and extended his hand for a handshake. "I'm Jinho Yu, vice president of a Jin guild. Pleased to meet you. I don't usually like talking business under these circumstances, but I'll make an exception for you." There was a look of satisfaction on Jin Woo's face as he watched Jinho lead the chairman somewhere quiet to talk. That kid really is a real businessman now. With those two distractions out of the way, Jin Woo refocused his attention on the actual reason he was here. Adam approached Jin Woo. "Here's the list." He handed Jin Woo a tablet that listed the names of the 10 best hunters in the world in order. "The Hunter Command Center has a system that awards each hunter points based on performance. These are the top 10 individuals with the most points." Jin Woo thought it interesting to see a hunter's career represented by points. He noticed that his name was missing. "So where do I rank on this list? If we include points for getting rid of the giant-type magic beasts." "Around here." Adam indicated the space between numbers 3 and 4. Jigang Liu, Thomas Andre, and Christopher Reed topped the list, so to have his name right below those three despite his shorter career meant he had been performing brilliantly. Number 4 is Siddharth Bachchan of India. 5 is 1 through 5 were all national-level hunters, and the ones below them were extremely formidable people. Suddenly, a noise distracted Jin Woo from the list. The hunter seemed confused by the arrival of an unexpected guest. Once he spotted the newcomer, Jin Woo handed the tablet back to Adam. "H. Hunter Sung, don't worry." As expected, the newcomer strode toward Jin Woo without any hesitation. Jigang tried to intercept, but was brushed aside. The guest soon stood before Jin Woo and took off his sunglasses. "Thomas Andre." Everyone was unnerved at the sight of the cool Jin Woo and Thomas, whose arm was bandaged, facing each other. Thomas stood a head taller, so he literally looked down on Jin Woo. "Hunter Jin Woo Sung, I'd like to ask you something." What could Thomas possibly have to ask him? Jin Woo thought it odd, but the national-level hunter didn't seem hostile, so he acquiesced. "This arm." Thomas raised his left arm wrapped in bandages. Healers told me they couldn't fix it because the magic power that hit me was so strong. Doctors told me the same thing. They said it was healing, but would take a long time to fully recover. Thomas had used his left arm to block a punch from Jin-Woo packed with magic power. By the end of the fight, Thomas's bones were shattered almost into dust. There was a good chance he wouldn't be able to use his left arm again. It had mended to this extent thanks to the healer's quick response and Thomas's own regenerative ability. Jin-Woo's attack was unimaginably destructive. One question plagued Thomas's thoughts as he suffered through the pain of his injuries, but he could only get an answer by approaching Jin-Woo like this. Jin-Woo wondered if Thomas was here to show off his injuries. Thomas continued, "You could have ended me along with everyone else in my guild." Thomas and his subordinates had been responsible for kidnapping Jinho in a foreign country and then attacking Hunter Sung when he came to rescue his colleague. Hence why the Hunter Command Center had recognized that Jin-Woo had acted in self-defense. They wouldn't have punished him even if he had killed everyone there. Not that there's any way to actually punish him. However, Jin-Woo had spared everyone apart from Dong Soo-won. If Thomas had been in Jin-Woo's shoes, he wouldn't have let anyone live. He would have had power as well as the justification to do it. But why had Jin-Woo chosen not to? This question had plagued Thomas's thoughts for the last 2 days. "Why did you let us live?" Thomas himself had admitted defeat and asked for mercy, but the choice had been in Jin-Woo's hands. He'd even spared the guild members who had battled his shadow soldiers. Thomas was curious as to why, but Jin-Woo's answer seemed almost too simple to justify Thomas's mental agonizing over the past few days. "None of you did anything to deserve death." While his arrogant attitude had been annoying, Thomas and the Scavenger Guild had shown up at the abandoned factory to rescue Dong Soo, one of their own. Though they had attacked Jin-Woo first, they had suffered enough for their actions. That was the conclusion Jin-Woo had reached in making the decision to spare their lives. Thomas nodded at the response. "I see." Considering Dong Soo's fate for his crimes, Thomas realized that Jin-Woo was being genuine. What a simple and clear reason. Thomas had even more to ponder on, but he felt at peace. He smiled. "When my arm gets better, I'd like to have a meal with you. If you leave your number with my manager, I'll drop you a line later." With his cautious invitation extended, Thomas turned. Laura, who was waiting behind him, bowed her head. And with that, Thomas left the banquet hall without looking back. The hunters in his way parted like the Red Sea. Laura watched as Thomas walked off before turning to Jin-Woo. "My boss was expressing his gratitude for sparing his and our guild members' lives." Jin-Woo didn't know how to respond to that. How was he supposed to get any of that from what Thomas had said? Laura explained. "He may not look it, but he gets embarrassed quite easily." "Oh, okay." If she said so, Jin-Woo nodded. More importantly, this exchange meant he didn't have to track Thomas down to assign a shadow soldier to him. Having given a proper interpretation of her boss's words, Laura then pulled out a small notebook and prepared to write something down. "If it's no trouble, could you let me know how to contact you? Oh, and..." The blonde beauty smiled. "Our guild master would like to give you a token of his appreciation. If you need anything, please let me know." "Oh, thank you, but no." Jin-Woo politely declined her offer. Laura's smile turned awkward, as if this troubled her. "Our guild master is a very competitive person. He doesn't like being indebted to anyone. So please, it can be anything." Jin-Woo was about to decline again, but sensed it would be rude to do so. The issue was, "I don't really have anything I need." Jin-Woo had already made quite a lot of money through raids. A Jin guild's profits were well above most large guilds thanks to the sale of the giant's remains alone. Of course, it wasn't comparable to the financial might of the scavenger guild, but it was more than enough for them. I don't think I'd need their help either. But just as he was about to decline the offer again, something popped into his head. Wait a minute, this is the scavenger guild. The guild consisted of the most elite hunters ever gathered. They had cleared countless dungeons, so they must have also acquired a great number of artifacts. Perhaps there was something worthwhile in their inventory. Jinwoo reluctantly asked. Maybe a useful dagger. The demon monarch's dagger hadn't worked on several adversaries with incredibly strong defense, so the scavenger guild might have something that could help. If it wasn't up to par, then he just wouldn't use it. A dagger. Understood. Thank you, Hunger Sung. Laura finished writing down her notes with a wide smile and then left the banquet hall. Adam had been tense throughout Thomas's unannounced visit, but he finally exhaled in relief. Hunter Sung, are you going to meet with the other hunters on the list now? I should. Let me help you find them. Our agents are stationed throughout the banquet hall, so we can locate the hunters quickly. No, thank you. Jinwoo grinned. There's no need. Jinwoo had already deployed some shadow soldiers, and they had found the hunters within the banquet hall. All Jinwoo had to do now was greet each hunter. Adam was perplexed by this refusal. Pardon? Jinwoo asked him a question instead of answering him. So why is there one hunter missing? I can't find number 6. How did you know? Jinwoo shrugged, and Adam nodded as if he understood. Ah, another trade secret, Adam explained. We haven't been able to reach that hunter over the past few days. The Brazilian government is secretly searching for them, but they haven't turned up yet. Jinwoo nodded. He had placed a shadow on number 2, Thomas. Numbers 3 and 6, Christopher Reed and the Brazilian hunter, weren't present. That leaves 7 people. Jinwoo turned to Adam. Let's get started. Roger. Jinwoo walked around the banquet hall and talked to all the hunters on the list. He asked Adam to introduce him, as he wanted to find out more about the hunters he was leaving with his shadows. He started with number 1, Jigang Liu, and finished in order with number 10. Huh? Is Hunter Sung trying to network here? But he's only talking to hunters who are. After having seen with whom Jinwoo was choosing to converse, they hoped the Korean man would also approach them. He's coming this way. Yes, of course I'm next. The hunters who had been anxiously awaiting Jinwoo lowered their heads in disappointment when he passed them by. Soon, Jinwoo's work was done, and he left the banquet hall with his entourage after assigning shadow soldiers to all the hunters on the list. Oh! Hunter number 10 cheered, but others sulked and drank in silence. The next day, the Hunter Command Center was at a loss as to why alcohol consumption had been so much higher compared to previous years. Tomorrow is the last day, right? Assistant Director Connor handed a cup of coffee to Adam, slouching in his chair. Adam sat up immediately and politely accepted the drink. Thank you, sir. Michael patted Adam on the shoulder and took a seat next to him. I started to hyperventilate when I first heard that Goliath and Hunter Sung were fighting. But I'm glad everything turned out okay thanks to your efforts. Good job. You don't need to mention it, sir. Despite his words, Adam's face lit up at the praise. His reaction brought a smile to the assistant director's face. So what's it been like with Hunter Sung? Adam pondered the question. Sir, did you know? Hunter Sung still works out every day. He works out? Yes, I've witnessed it with my own eyes. He runs 10 kilometers, does 100 push-ups, and sit-ups and squats as well. What? Michael's eyes were wide with wonder. Jin Woo was the most powerful hunter in the world, yet he still did a daily workout routine. Jin Woo's physical status was already beyond human, so it wasn't like a bit of jogging would do much for him. The assistant director couldn't understand why he'd go through the trouble. Adam explained, "I think he's doing it more for the mental discipline." "For the mental discipline?" Adam nodded. Based on Jin Woo's casual attitude toward advanced technology, his commitment to not skipping a workout, his mysterious ability to heal an exhausted body and mind, Adam considered Jin Woo the living embodiment of amazing. Michael couldn't agree more. He truly is a great man. How great would it be if Jin Woo were an American hunter? Michael couldn't help feeling jealous of Korea. Huh? The coffee tastes different today. He usually found this coffee quite flavorful, but today, he couldn't bring himself to drink half of it. He found it to taste quite bitter. There was a rumor in Korea that if one wanted to locate the office of the president of the Hunters Association of Korea, just look for the room with the lights on late at night. President Go was in his office late again, trying to finish his work. There had been more incidents recently due to the growing number of more powerful magic beasts and awakened beings. It was the president's job to handle these matters. It was also the source of the president's headache. President Go put his paperwork down on his desk and rubbed his tired eyes. How strange. He'd had continuous heart palpitations as of late. Ba-dump, be-a-dump. It had been a while since he was first diagnosed with heart problems, but something was not right these days. Is this the end? His doctor had told him he'd be dead within 6 months if he didn't retire. He'd made it 1 year and then another. Even if this is the end, I've had it good up to now. Gun, he laughed in spite of himself. In the past, he would have pushed himself to stick around for just a little while more, but he no longer felt as anxious. What's changed? What was the difference between then and now? After some quiet thought, President Go chuckled at the obvious answer. Thanks to Hunter Jin Woo-sung, Korea now had the power to stop an S-rank level disaster. The country's status had gone up because of Jin Woo's existence. Maybe his heart had held out until now, so he could meet Jin Woo. A bittersweet smile crossed his face. What kind of nonsense am I spouting? President Go's voice echoed in the empty office. Speaking of Hunter Sung, isn't he back in Korea tomorrow? He perked up at the thought of Jinchul debriefing him on everything that had gone on with Jin Woo. Ring. It was his phone. Who's calling me at this hour? Had there been a terrible accident somewhere? President Go felt uneasy as he answered the phone. Are you busy tonight? It was his wife. My dear. He relaxed when he realized she was checking on him because of the late hour. Of course not. I'm heading home as. The call suddenly cut off with the sound of static. Hello? Hello? There was no answer from his wife. What was going on? President Go happened to glance out the window as he put down his phone. He was rendered speechless. Everything he should have seen through the window, buildings, roads, even people, were gone without a trace. The scenery outside had changed to pitch-black darkness in a matter of seconds. Something impossible had happened. How in the world? Startled, President Go stood up and realized someone he had never seen before was sitting on his couch as if they had always been there. A human. No, this doesn't feel like a human. Besides its strange presence, the figure also had a face as pale as a corpse. Long white hair, sharp pointy ears, and silvery eyes that shone like gems. It was an ice elf, otherwise known as ice slayers. But President Go hadn't sensed it when it entered the room. He slowly put the phone down and asked in a low voice, "You? Who are you?"